Hi, my name is Owen Fletcher. I'm the guitar instructor at the Academy of Richmond County in Augusta, Georgia. Welcome back to our web series on how to improvise on the guitar. In the first three videos, we talked about using tone centers. In level 1, our tone center or focus in our solo was the root note of the key. In our example, it's been the A notes inside of the A minor pentatonic scale. In the second video, we talked about level 2 improvising, using the root notes of the chords of the song as tone centers. In our 12-bar blues chord progression, you used an A7, D7, and E7 chord. So our tone centers shifted to an A and D and E as those chords changed. In the last video, we talked about level 3 improvising and how we can use any note inside those chords, any chord tone, as a valid tone center. Now, that ought to have really improved your soloing, just really understanding the theory and giving yourself some sort of structure. You're not just playing random notes when you're improvising. But you may still be feeling like when you listen to the really great improvisers, there's something missing from your own soloing. Something that makes it so that you're almost like you're telling a story as you're improvising. It really is going somewhere. Maybe you feel like you're stuck still in kind of a little bit of a box. Well, level 4 improvising I think you're really going to like because it's not as theory intensive. We're not going to be talking about the notes and the chords and the, notes and the scale so much. We're going to be talking about some artistic choices you can make. I'm going to only cover 3 techniques in this video, but there are probably more. And as you get more experience, you'll learn, kind of start picking up on the things that artists are doing to really improve their soloing. We're going to talk about 3: dynamics, range, and repetition. And using dynamics, range, and repetition will add a lot of interest to your soloing and really make it more narrative, more like you're telling a story rather than just playing random notes. So what are they? Well, dynamics is very easy. When we use the term dynamics in music, we are referring to changes in volume. So all you've got to do to add dynamics to your playing is vary up the volume you're playing at. It's very easy for a beginner to just come in and just kind of at a medium to loud volume, just kind of chug away on the notes the whole solo. And when you're worrying about tone centers and the notes in the scale, that's perfectly acceptable. But as you get comfortable with all those things, you need to start thinking about how can I take a solo and make it more interesting by using changes in volume. You might start loud and then let the volume get low and then get louder again. Or you might start low and then slowly build up to a louder volume by the end of the solo. There's a lot of things that you can do. Let me give you some short examples here. So there were some quick changes in volume, and it adds a little bit of interest to the solo. I'm not doing anything different. I'm still using my tone centers. But just adding some changes in volume, and I'm just doing that with my picking hand, just not picking as loud or as soft. Some guitarists, you will see them use the volume knob on their instrument. If you want to see a master at this, Jeff Beck is very good at this. He does a lot of kind of special tricks. Derek Trucks uses this a lot too. And as you roll your volume down, sometimes if your amp is good, it'll actually clean up. It'll be a cleaner sound. And as you roll your volume all the way to 10, then your amp will sometimes distort more. So you can create some interesting changes in texture too as you're changing volume. You can also use pedals, but just a good old-fashioned, picking harder or softer will be enough. All right, let's talk about range next. Range is simply the distance between the lowest note to the highest note in your soloing. When we first learned how to play an improvised solo, I showed you the minor pentatonic scale, and I showed you this little box of notes right around here. It was kind of surrounding the A note right here. And they're easy to get to with your first and third finger. Well, that's pretty limiting though. Don't forget we have a scale pattern that goes 2 complete octaves. So you can use this to your advantage just by starting at 1 octave and migrating to the other octave as you play. For example, so by just constantly, slowly progressing up the scale, so I'm going from a low pitch to a high pitch, I'm increasing the range of notes that I'm playing, and it's giving the solo some interest. Well, what do you do if you're comfortable with the 2 octaves and you still feel like you're in a little box and you watch the great guitar players and you see them using the whole neck. Well, there are some things we can do to start stretching our pattern. You know, guitarists, like I said in the last video, we get kind of trapped into mistaking the finger pattern, you know, for the real thing. We think this finger pattern that's an A major chord is the way to play an A major chord. Well, no, it's a way. It's a convenient way. But anytime you play an A, a C sharp, and an E, you're playing an A major chord. The same thing is true with scales. Okay, what defines the A minor pentatonic scale are the notes A, C, D, E, and G. Anytime you're playing those notes, you're playing the minor pentatonic scale in the key of A. This finger pattern was just a convenient way to do it. But there are other finger patterns as well. So one of the things that you can begin to do is start branching out a little bit. Okay, so in our normal pattern, the second half of the octave or of the pattern is, instead of playing this note, which is the last A, on the bottom string, I'm going to play it on the same string as the second to last note, the G, by just sliding up my pinky to that note. Why would I do that? Well, it gives me access to these two notes. And these two notes are the same as these two. A, C, and D. A, C, D. They're the same notes, but by moving up to a higher octave, I've increased the interest in the solo a little bit. And I've sort of busted myself out just a little bit of that finger scale that I had learned. And that's what's really important, is just stretching your knowledge of the finger patterns a little bit. You can go online and look up the A minor pentatonic scale on a guitar, and you can find all kinds of websites, and they'll show you a guitar neck, and you type in A minor pentatonic, and it'll put dots all over the neck. And those dots represent A's, C's, D's, E's, and G notes. And you can take any slice anywhere on the neck and do that. So you can see the shape that I've shown you, and you can see where the other notes are nearby. So feel free to modify that pattern, bust out of that box, and increase your range. That'll really go a long way in making your solos better. There's some auxiliary materials on our website with this unit that will help you learn the minor pentatonic scale over the whole neck. So feel free to look those up as well if you need it. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is repetition. And repetition is exactly what it sounds like. Taking something and repeating it, doing it more than one time. We almost kind of hinted at it in the last section, talking about range. Repetition is something that adds pattern to what you're doing. It sounds like what you're doing, even though you're making it up on the spot. It sounds like it was an intentionally thought out pattern of notes, even though you're doing it on the spot. And if you just do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, then it is going to sound boring. But if you just repeat it a couple of times, and if you repeat it but change it a little bit every time you repeat it, it's going to sound better. It's going to sound really cool. Repetition is your friend in music. Just don't overdo it. There's a couple of things you can do. You can repeat rhythms, or you can repeat melodies, or both. What do I mean? Well, I might repeat a rhythm like this. So even though I was changing notes the whole time there, all of them were played with similar rhythmic patterns, the 3 or 4 little phrases that I played. I could also play the same notes, the same melody, while I'm soloing, and just kind of keep repeating that little melody while the rest of, in between, I'm sort of changing it up. Let me show you what I mean. So in that case, I was kind of repeating the rhythm there at the beginning, but I had this little riff I was doing, and I kept coming back to that riff. And by returning to that riff, repeating that riff, it's going to add structure, it's going to add pattern to my solo. I wasn't just doing that, I was doing other things in between it, but it gave me sort of a motif, would be the music term, a little motif to work with in my solo. So using repetition smartly by repeating rhythms, or repeating notes, or little tiny riffs, and using every repetition as an opportunity to kind of evolve what you're doing and keep it interesting and not stale, that'll go a long way in making your solos sound much more professional. Okay, so let me play the 12-bar blues MP3 that's on your website that you should have been playing along with, and give you some examples of changes in dynamics and repetition and range to kind of get you started, and then afterwards I'll explain the assignment to you. Okay, so what's your last assignment for this unit? You're going to take everything that you've learned and put it all together. You'll notice in the improvising that I just did, I still use my tone centers. I was doing some changes in volume, my range was kind of I was going from low to high. I was using some repetition, but you still have to think about tone centers. In the previous assignments, I've said that you could just play a solo over one of the two progressions, but for this one, I want you to play over the whole MP3 track. There's a little bit of an intro, a little bit of an outro. You don't have to play over those parts, but all the 24 measures in the middle, you're going to be soloing over this, and you're going to put everything together. You're going to use changes in range, in volume, and as well as some repetition to add interest to your solos, and you still need to be paying attention to those levels 2 and 3 tone centers as well, especially the level 2 stuff. You got to find those chord changes. When you're done, shoot a video of yourself playing over it, upload it as always. I hope you've enjoyed this unit. There will probably be additional videos on improvising later, but I want you to know that once you've kind of mastered these 4 basic levels of improvising, that regardless of what genre that we're playing in, what type of scale we're using, these principles will always apply. We've been talking about the blues, but it'll apply to anything. We may look at other chord progressions, we may look at other scales, we may look at other genres, but we're always going to be using these 4 levels of improvising. You can't go wrong with them. I hope this has helped you become a much better soloer. I hope you've learned to enjoy it. I hope you learned to appreciate the blues a little bit even, and I'll see you next time.